next session, which will be the roundtable discussion moderated by Lars. Handing back to you, Lars.
Okay, so before we continue, I would like to ask everyone for a favor, and that is to actually click the link and register, because that's something that we really want to kick off. It's important to the project. So if you don't mind, take a minute to just register and join, and then hopefully you will get a lot of learning out of it. We also have the learning materials are hosted on EduFlow, and we also have a community on Differ, which is this chat application for learning communities. So that's a way to communicate asynchronously in between webinars and conferences and these synchronous sessions. So I'm really looking forward to bring some people together here for our roundtable conversation. We have asked a number of people to join in, and I will ask each of them to give just a brief introduction to themselves and what they're working with and their interest in this this area of chatbots. Why is it interesting at all? So with me today I have Marita Skjuve. She just gave a brief introduction, but and we have Tom Moule from the UK. He's working with JISC. We have Viktor from Hubert and Gregor Jarisch as well. So please, I don't know if everyone of you turned on your cameras. Prepare yourself for a roundtable discussion here. Hello, Viktor. Now I can see you as well.
Hello.
You got a fabulous background with the Northern Lights.
Yeah.
Okay, so since Marita started introducing herself briefly before, perhaps we could ask Viktor to go first here and just give a brief introduction.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Lars. My name is Viktor. I'm one of the co-founders behind Skjuve. We've been operating in the educational sector in about 3 years' time now. And my interest with chatbots in education is some sort of vision to help facilitate learning in a more efficient way, basically.
Cool. Marita, do you have anything to add to your previous presentation? Perhaps I could ask, why do you think it's interesting to commit your entire PhD around chatbots?
Well, I like chatbots because they communicate like humans. So to me, it's very intriguing that we can sort of automate humans in a way. And I especially like it in the student context, because I'm not such a big fan of those Q&A chatbots that you find in customer service. I like when you use the chatbots more to build relationship and to sort of aim to support people in a bigger way. And I feel like with students, you have the potential to do so much because they need support in a lot of various ways. And I think chatbots have a huge potential to sort of support students in a big range of ways. So that's why I'm very interested in chatbots, and also especially in this context.
Great, thank you. Tom, are you there?
Yes, hello. Hi, my name's Tom Moule. I'm from JISC in the UK. And my interest in chatbots comes from the work that we're doing at JISC National Centre for AI in Education. We are working on, one of the things that we're doing is finding a number of promising products in the AI ED or EdTech space, and then piloting them throughout a range of colleges and universities in the UK. one of the first pilot that we've kicked off with is a pilot that's looking at chatbot in further education colleges. So that's a key part of my interest, and I'm more broadly interested in any edtech tools that can improve the student experience and improve teaching and learning for students.
Awesome. Could you mention a little bit about JISC? Because with an international crowd here, I'm
Absolutely,
not so sure
yeah.
everyone knows exactly what
Absolutely,
it is.
yes, of course. Thanks, Lars. So JISC is a non-for-profit organisation it's a membership organisation that works with all universities and most colleges throughout the United Kingdom on sort of, I would say, almost anything to do with technology and education. So that goes right from we are the providers of the JANIC network, which is allows universities, colleges to have access to high quality internet, do a lot of work around cybersecurity, also do a lot of work around the uses of education technology for teaching and learning as well. So our strapline is tech for good in education, and that's kind of encompasses all of what we do.
Yeah, fantastic. So we have kind of a researcher represented here. We have Tom as an HE insider, so to speak, and we got Viktor as an industry expert as well, and Gregor, if I may say, you might be the technologist around the table. Perhaps you could introduce yourself briefly, and perhaps mention what you've done around EDI, for example.
Sure. So my name is Gregor Jarisch. I've been working with chatbots in 2006, originally working with a chatbot framework called EDI. Enhanced Dialogue-Driven Intelligence is in Java implemented chatbot framework that has been around quite a while now, and is also open source since 2016. Has been also the foundation of the chatbot Bow that we have developed in our Differ.chat application. So I'm the CTO of Differ. We basically developed chatbots for various reasons, but one in particularly that it's much easier to get in touch with a chatbot than it might be to reach out to a human being, especially when you don't know people and you are afraid in certain situations to get in touch with someone else, or basically not in the position to have a conversation with another human being. Then chatbots are a great chance to sort of contemplate that problem, while a chatbot never has any emotions, at least not real emotions, maybe programmed ones, and you will never look stupid in front of a chatbot. Maybe the chatbot will look stupid, that could be, but at least it's a safe area to communicate with a chatbot, and I think that's really great about this type of technology.
Thank you. So the topic here for the discussion is to contemplate a little bit on the the history of chatbots. Like, we're restricting it a little bit, so we're thinking about the last 5 years, and then thinking into the future, looking into the future, the next 5 years. So first, I would like to just challenge you a little bit and ask if you ask about what you think might be the strongest achievements of chatbots in the last 5 years. If there's any really cool aspects about chatbots, or any specific implementations of chatbots that you came across that is showing real value to students, to educators, or other stakeholders here. Is there? Yeah, the floor is open here. So if then anything comes to mind that you would like to mention around that, please do.
To not talk about our own technology, because that would be cheesy. I remember there was that company, and please don't quote me, I might get it wrong here, AdmitHub. I think they have rebranded in recent months. I liked really much their approach of sort of having a chatbot taking care about students that applied for university from the journey of once getting in touch to university all the way through the entire admission until they sort of get into the university. I think this phase is particularly important, and I found it very interesting that they, instead of having it all humanized and all sort of having to talk to individual students, I think it was a very keen idea to sort of having that part automated with chatbots.
Yeah, if I don't misremember, they rebranded as Mainstay. Yeah, it's just one example. I think, Tom, I think you highlighted some examples in some of the AI reports that you published with JISC.
Yeah, I mean, a really good example that from the UK context is Open University's chatbot or digital assistant called Taylor. And Taylor's role is to support students who have accessibility needs with making sure that they get the right support. So it is a chatbot that has the sort of Q&A functionality, but also has the chatbot directed led conversation functionality as well, so that the chatbot can actually retrieve that information from the students, so the chatbot can then direct students to the appropriate resources and support and provision, and also making sure that all that data is there and is available. So I think that's a really good use case. I think the another one of the key successes in the UK tertiary education sector around chatbots has been Bolton College's Ada chatbot, and trying to remember, I think it might have been not quite 5 years, but 4 years that I first sort of learned about Ada and its performance. And as well as being a very effective chatbot and really having a huge impact on the students and staff at Bolton College, I think it's become almost a bit of a beacon for technology and EdTech more broadly. Whenever in the UK a sort of a new report comes out looking at education technologies and AI in education, Bolton College's example of Ada will almost always be mentioned, and this because it has proven its efficacy. It's a sort of and this is talking about the broader market of education technology and not just chatbots. But I think these chatbots have, and Ada in particular, have proven themselves to be very mature products that do exactly what they say on the tin. We use this expression in the UK. There's a sort of wood treatment product called Ron Seal, and its strapline does exactly what they say on the tin. So for products like that, that's where it's not sort of, there's no bluster, there's no overselling. It's it does exactly what it says on the tin. It provides a good quality service that ensures the students can get the insights they need, that saves time for teachers, and has that sort of element of binding the college community together. So I think that's a real success, as it's given, I think, EdTech, people who are interested in how EdTech will grow and mature across the whole sector, some faith that there are some really good mature products out there that we can point to and try and emulate in other areas of education technology.
Thanks. That's
Lars?
a great example, and kudos to Aftab and your team there. We have one of the brains and hearts between Ada here with us today.
Excellent. Hello. Hi, Aftab.
Lars, we have one raised hand. Shall we perhaps give it a voice and ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Luba from Leeds University, you should now be able to talk. Can you hear us? You perhaps are muted.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Let's continue. If you change your mind, raise your hand again, and please do that. Please raise your hands, everyone, and we will let you in on the table. That's the cool thing about virtual roundtables, is that you can just make it as big as you like. Bring in new chairs. Viktor, how about you? Is there any major achievements that you feel has happened here during last 5 years? You've been following the development of chatbots from the inside, really, and I know you also started a Facebook group for. Was it? I think it was more AI in general, that Facebook group.
Yeah, it's mostly AI, but
it's
chatbots is
chatbots.
part of it.
Yeah.
I'd say. But one of the most fascinating examples that I've seen is the Jill Watson example. I don't know if anyone.
Can you say it again?
Jill Watson. It's
Jill
based
Watson.
on IBM's Watson supercomputer thing, and they were using it in Georgia Institute of Technology to respond to a bunch of student questions. So students could get their questions answered 24/7, and it was really helpful to the students, but it was also really helpful to the teachers because they didn't have to respond to the same questions over and over again, and they saved a bunch of time. And yeah.
What was that the bot where they didn't first disclose that it was a bot?
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty famous example.
I read about that case a couple of times. I got some news around.
Yeah, it went viral basically.
Yeah.
We have another raised hand,
yeah.
Eric. You should be allowed to talk, Eric. Can you hear us?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Welcome, Eric. Please introduce yourself briefly first.
I'm Eric Atwell from Leeds University. Was part of the EDUBOTS project from the start, and I have to say, at the outset, we had this sort of idea that chatbots would take over or at least help in directly teaching students, and it seems that one thing that's come clearer is that the chatbots in universities are being used for helping in admissions and other student support roles, but not really in teaching directly. Is that a fair assumption or a fair conclusion?
I would definitely agree with that conclusion, that in student support it has been more implemented than in teaching and learning, and perhaps clearer user cases in student support.
And it could be that teaching is more challenging, more difficult, and maybe that's the next challenge for chatbots, is to how to deliver more personalized student education, to not necessarily to fire me and replace me, but rather to help me so I can give general lectures, and then students can have more individual learning from the chatbot.
So I know, Eric, that you have a lot of experience with AI and chatbots. So in terms of looking at the past here, do you see any major achievements from chatbots?
Well, the big thing seems to be more robust systems which do as they say on the tin, I think was what Tom said, but for a very specific task, like advising students about their timetables or admissions or whatever. And maybe we've more clearly identified what are the things that these sorts of chatbots can't really do, which is much less well-defined tasks, like answering student questions. Maybe teaching a course via a video recorded lecture is fairly straightforward, but guessing in advance what sorts of follow-up questions the students are likely to ask is more challenging, because it's all sorts of things they could ask.
So we have you online here. I know you have a lot of technical expertise, and that yourself and your team have a lot of expertise in the linguistic part of kind of the brain of the chatbot. Is there any breakthroughs or any developments there worth mentioning?
I think the big thing in computational linguistics is transformers like BERT, which essentially a black box which, given two sentences, can tell if they are similar in meaning or not. And this has been then adapted to all sorts of things like question answering from huge data sets. So chatbots are getting better at being able to answer pretty much any question I ask. That's not quite the same thing as supporting a lecturer in a specific course, because they have the question answering is very general. I can ask Alexa all sorts of general knowledge questions, but Alexa can't actually help me when I get to more specific things like what exactly is the difference between deep learning and other sorts of machine learning. She doesn't really know that.
Okay, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And I think it does specify some of the classification about chatbots and AI, the kind of general purpose solutions and the more specific purpose solutions. Marita, perhaps I know you have been researching a lot the kind of the human chatbot relationships and how they are initiated and developed over time. Is there any kind of interesting things that you've been observing there?
Well, in my research, I do see that humans can develop attachment and close and meaningful relationships with chatbots. And I do think that is of great significance in an education context where having sort of that personal relationship with your teacher or a counselor will be important. So I'm really excited to see how sort of we can use this technology to aim for that type of development in the future and in an educational context, because the relationship aspects and the things that have to do with feelings and support and these type of things is not well covered in an education context just yet, but I do see a lot of potential for that, and especially when it comes to teaching too. I know that chatbots have a huge potential to facilitate self-reflection and to help people improve themselves in various ways. And I do think that will sort of be like the next step for chatbots in an education, or at least I hope so.
I remember from one letter in a second, Gregor here. I remember from the webinar that you had this summer, and that we were talking about trust and the development of trust. And that just seemed, to me, that seems like one of the real big keys to successful development of the future chatbots is like, can we trust chatbots to give me the right answers? Can we trust chatbots to provide me with academic support, with emotional support, even So do you have any what's your thoughts about kind of that?
I think
that trust in this context.
Yeah, I think trust is a difficult thing here. I did recently a study where I had some students test a prototype that I made of a chatbot that were supposed to follow them for a semester. And we talked about trust, and they all said that they trusted the chatbot because it came from a trustable source, like it came from a school that they knew, and they thought that this was a great idea. And then I asked them, because the chatbot provided them with a list of like their curriculums, like the book they were supposed to buy, and I asked them, would you buy the books based on the recommendation from the chatbot? And most of them said no, they would not do that. But they still claim that they trust the chatbot. So there is sort of this, I don't know, a barrier that the chatbot have to break through when it comes to building trust with students, especially when it's related to very important things, such as books that are very expensive, or how to sort of write an essay and these type of things that can directly influence your grade. So I do think that will be a challenge to get students to feel comfortable with the chatbot and trust advice in the same way they would with the human, even though it's humans that makes the dialogue, but there's still something there that doesn't fully click, I think.
Gregor,
Yeah, just wanted to comment my thoughts on this entire topic of chatbots teaching or having a teaching role in the future. So I think generally speaking, whenever it comes to trust or human connections, I think chatbots are not a good replacement, because eventually a chatbot will never be connecting, or that's maybe not true, because there are chatbots that personally collect, but at least in educational settings, I think it should not be the goal of the chatbot to personally connect to users like other humans, human beings do. However, I think when it comes to practicing, when it comes to sort of, there is a terminology called micro learning, where you have very small sessions about a very specific topic. I think chatbot could be ideal in terms of helping you practice certain scenarios, going over certain topics again and again. So I like to play basketball, and the way I imagine is having a robot that passes me the ball so I can shoot and don't have to rebound myself. However, when it comes to teaching the fundamentals, or when it comes to getting an advice, I still want to have this teacher that I can ask, and where I can sort of get this individualized information towards the question I have, or the shortcomings that I try to overcome. So I think that could be really the differentiator in the future. We will still have the teachers that present the knowledge, but moreover really try to give guidance to the students. I think that will be the main and massive role of teachers in the future, whereas chatbots might take over all the reoccurring things, like practicing, like sharing the same information over and over again. So I think this is stuff that doesn't change, but it's just a matter of bringing the knowledge to the users. I think that are great use cases for chatbots.
Yeah. Something that comes to my mind here is kind of how chatbots are conveyed to students, how they are introduced, and how it is communicated what a chatbot can do, should do, and what type of humans are supporting it. So if it's just a standalone chatbot solution that comes across as something that is not well managed, for example, that could lower the level of trust and engagement. Well, if it's communicated that this is a chatbot solution that is supported by the professor, by a teaching team, and it's well managed on a weekly basis, then that could give a higher trust level. That's my assumption here. So I think that part of how chatbot solutions are managed, and if we're looking at it as a standalone solution that should automate things out of the box without any human support or maintenance, then I'm more skeptical to that compared to a solution that could be that comes with a team of humans.
Yes, I agree with that a lot, and also think that the specific use case is important, because I feel like chatbots today are sort of suffering a little bit from customer service chatbots being provided at an early stage, and people having a lot of bad experiences with those because they were not ready. So I think it's important to offer chatbots for specific tasks that they can be successful in, to sort of overcome some of the bad reputation that chatbots have today, because chatbots is a lot more than the early customer service type technology that we have seen. It has come a long way, but that's, at least in my experience, what people tend to associate when they hear the word chatbots. It's that crappy customer service thing that couldn't answer anything.
Tom, I saw that you raised your hand there.
Yeah, I wanted to sort of link a point. So Tom Pickard in the chat has asked about the benefits of building chatbots in-house, as Bolton College has, and I thought that sort of speaks to there's a really interesting point there about that trust and enthusiasm you can build. And I think one of the things that I think is particularly inspiring about the Bolton College example, amongst many, is that because it was built in-house, there was a lot of opportunity, and a lot of it was built in conjunction with the students themselves. So the students having a role to play in actually looking at what kind of questions it should be able to answer, and making sure that question and answer set is as robust and comprehensive as possible. A role to play in actually choosing and the persona of the chatbot. So it being named Ada after Ada Lovelace was, my understanding, a collective decision. And I know we've got Aftab in the chat, and I'm sure we'll be able to add points there. But I think that's that ability to build something up in-house as an organization and work together collaboratively as a community to build this chatbot does a lot to engender that level of trust and confidence that the responses you're getting from the chatbots are going to meet your needs and can be trusted, and you can move forward with those.
Yes, I agree with that. And that's what I've seen in my own research too, that when people build trust with chatbots, it seems to be on an emotional level, partly like this chatbot responds in a nice way, it doesn't judge me, and in a practical way where they need to understand how the chatbot was built, what type of data does it use, and they need to do a lot of research to understand the privacy and all of that. So I do think that actually involving the end user in the development of the chatbots is a good idea to facilitate the process of establishing trust and to understand how to use the chatbot and what it can and can't do.
Absolutely. Just one observation there, or one idea is that we need to look at it at different levels. So in terms of there needs to be that natural language processing and just general language understanding. That might be something where we need to collaborate on a global basis. And then on an industry level, there might be things where we can collaborate in higher education, or perhaps, for example, JISC could facilitate that cross-institution collaboration to build a cross-institution knowledge base that are specific to education. And then there might be a level of institutional knowledge bases where you engage all the stakeholders, including students, in more specific knowledge. So that's how I'm organizing it in my mind. But let's.
Lars, we have a raised hand. Maybe
Okay,
another
awesome.
chance to bring it in.
Yep.
Matt, Stanfield Jenna, you should be able to connect it. Can you hear us, Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thanks very much. Oh, sorry, I don't have my video on. I don't know why. But my question was going to be around whether anyone on the panel wants to comment on humanizing chatbots, particularly it was the Ada reference to Ada Lovelace, a very esteemed woman in computing history who might be sitting around answering basic administrative questions. Not that that's unsuccessful, but just canvassing the panel's opinions on humanizing, genderizing, giving names to robots and or chatbots, and whether that's a good thing, or whether we should go in a different direction and keep chatbots clearly labeled what they are and maybe depersonalize them or dehumanize them to make a very distinctive, different experience for the end user. And I'd be really interested to hear different people's perspectives on that question.
I can start. So I think what we did with Bo, the chatbot Bo inside the different chat was neither the one side nor the other. So I think we didn't try to build a chatbot that replaces a human or gives the feeling of being replaced, because our chatbot looks very sort of acute, almost like an animation alien kind of version. So you wouldn't mistake it for a human. On the other hand, we wanted to give the chatbot a certain facial expressions to make it nicer to talk to give it a bigger sense of trust in terms of being understood with the problem. So I think when it comes to user experience, when it comes to having a chatbot look inviting to talk to, I think facial expressions and other mechanisms to make a human look more connectable to, I think that's where the humanized version comes into play. On the other hand, I think we should never try to replace humans or pretend that a chatbot is a human, not just for the sake of people finding out that it is a chatbot later and then might being upset about it, but also because I think it's very dangerous to not have a clear picture of what chatbots do and what humans do. I think that should be two separate categories. And I think we should not sort of have humans trying, not have chatbots trying to take over whatever humans do today.
Anyone else on the panel that would like to share their thoughts here?
Yes. So as part of our pilot chatbot, we've organised a series of what we're calling responsible design forums to discuss some of the ethically sort of laden questions around chatbot design with the end users, so with students and a number of members of staff as well. We're very early days in that process, but one of the questions, or two of the questions we've been asking, are around gender and the implications of chatbots having gender, and also the persona more broadly that chatbots have. Just some of the initial conversations that come out, and this isn't comprehensive yet because we've got further discussions to have with as part of this process, but there did seem a strong steer that actually the gendered nature of chatbots in general, as a sort of rule of thumb, not in all cases, but may not be the preferable way to go with things, because it can reinforce gender biases, but also because it can reinforce the idea of gender as a binary state as well. And that was quite a clear steer from these discussions that we've had around this so far. Around persona, I think there was a bit of a tension there. I think people erred on the side of not wanting to humanize chatbots because of it creating a sort of a false sense that there is a human speaking to you and supporting you behind the curtain, but also understood that actually in some cases there was a lot of benefit to that, and there was a lot of benefit to that air of familiarity that you might get with a chatbot with a greater human persona. So I think yes, I think that those are some thoughts, and what we're keen to do as part of our sort of overall just is come up with some steers and advice on this more broadly. As I said, we're at a very early stage now in the conversation we've had, and that's just a sort of sneak peek at what we've heard so far. But it may be that, you know, when we've got a larger sample size, other opinions come into it. But I think it's a really interesting question, and in short, one we're trying to answer by asking people's opinions from end users.
Thank you, Tom. I see time really flies fast here, and we're still on the kind of looking hindsight. We're touching the future as well in the conversation, so that's awesome. I would just like to ask the panelists a question here. We might draw over a couple of minutes. I hope that's okay for the next speaker. Thank you, Matt, for a very thought-provoking question here. It's all in the details, really, for how. Let's look ahead. We are now 5 years. That's 2027. That's strange to think about. 2027. What kind of breakthroughs or achievements do you believe that we will discuss then? You have put your visionary glasses on here.
So, this is probably going to be the most visionary of answers, but I suppose my response is I'd like to see where we've got best practice at the moment, that being spread and becoming prevalent across colleges and universities. So, you know, where you've got great examples, Ada, Taylor, Beacon at Staffordshire University, actually having more of these being seen as this being commonplace. I think there's a lot of a huge number of technical developments that there will be, and I'll let the other panelists speak to that. But I think I'm quite keen to see that sort of prevalence and acceleration of implementation as a big development over the next 5 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like we have a lot of prototypes and stuff that have been tested out in like study settings, but we don't really have that huge prevalence of chatbots like globally in education, more or less. So I hope that they will sort of become more like a staple, and they will sort of find their way in education, and not just be something that we see in specific type of universities that have research projects related to this or have some other interests in chatbots in education. So that's my hope for the future.
Gregor, Viktor,
yeah. I'd like to see sort of chatbots becoming the single point of information at universities, where whether you're a new student or a current student, you know exactly where to go to. And the chatbot might not solving your problem initially, but at least will connect you to the right person, or perhaps another chatbot who can help you with the specific task. So I think the times where there is no idea who to ask should be gone, and ideally in the future there should be always clear where to get to in order to find your information.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the metaverse is evolving, both in terms of hosting educational events, but also by introducing chatbots and maybe combining them even.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think we will 2027, then we will see several cross-institutional implementations. So we're collaborating on different levels, where we're breaking down some of the silos that I experience now. I think also we will find these conversational experiences being more omni-channel in the educational context. That means that it would be the in interaction with a chatbot, both on the website, but following over into a learning management system and possibly other solutions as well. So I think having a relationship to a chatbot that you can interact with around the metaverse, if you'd like, the educational metaverse. Thank you for sharing those thoughts, and thank you for participating in this roundtable discussion. I think this was a great warm up for the rest of today. And let me just take a brief second to have a quick look at the program. Gregor, would you like to introduce the next speakers here today? Thank you, Tom, Marita, and Viktor, and Gregor.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you to all the questions in the chat. I think there might be it's great to see the conversation. There being conversations in the crowd here, and hope to be able to follow up on the conversations here as well if there's outstanding questions.
Great. Lovely first session. Thanks for participating, everyone. Also, thanks for all the attendees who raised questions or were chatting and communicating with each other. So now